Where's the boss? I still haven't figured out that I'm the parent in the family, let alone figured out that I'm the boss at work. So, I mean, I've got a lot to learn.
Has Carla shared this cartoon with you?
I don't think so.
All right, so it's the boss and his assistant looking at an org chart. Okay, and the caption says, "Well, you are the boss of me."
I'll have to get that from her.
We are only missing the Attorney General at this point.
I'd like to say hi to everybody else. I didn't know everybody was on, and oh, there it is. There's the grid. Okay. I didn't mean to ignore anybody. Dr. Myers, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
That's great.
And I still don't see Steve. Steve, I know you're on. How are you today?
I'm here.
There you go.
I'm doing all right. Thank you for asking. I'll show you why my video's not on. I'm sideways. I can. If anybody has a clue, I'm telling you, any other video that I do, if it's Teams or whatever, it's perfect. It's only in Zoom that I'm sideways. So it's not my computer, it's something in Zoom, and I have looked everywhere in the settings, and I cannot figure it out. I literally have to turn my computer up on its side so that I'm straight.
But now we're all crooked, right?
Right. Oh. I miss that big IT department at my old job. They would just come and fix it.
So we do have a quorum. The Attorney General is not present, but everyone else is. We are 3 minutes past 2 o'clock. I defer to the chair and to Jim as to when you want to start.
All right, as long as we got a quorum, we can get rolling. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the February 17th, 2022 Finance Committee meeting, the Board of Directors of Kentucky Housing Corporation. I'd like to ask if we have a quorum.
We do have a quorum, and the press has been notified.
The press is notified. Fantastic. Okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take up the minutes from the previous meeting, which was held on September 23rd, 2021. You all should have been provided with a copy of those minutes. To get it into discussion, if I could have a motion.
So moved by Katie.
Thanks, Katie. And is there any discussion or any change, any suggested changes, anything that might have been missed? Hearing none, I will ask for a second.
Second by Isaac.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, and any opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 3, which is approval of the revisions to the internal audit. And Kevin Field is going to deliver that presentation. Kevin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And yes, this is an agenda item for you for a revision to the internal audit charter. So for those I have not met online here, I'm Kevin Fields, and I am the Deputy Executive Director of the Internal Audit Department here at Kentucky Housing Corporation. So the revision that we're recommending today, it's just one revision to the current internal audit charter. And this is in accordance with internal auditing standards. So the original audit charter, just to give a little bit of background information, was originally approved by KHC's Board of Directors back on March the 23rd, 1995, which formally established the audit department within Kentucky Housing Corporation. So over the past 27 odd years here, this charter has been revised and updated accordingly. Again, that's in accordance with auditing standards. The last review was approved by the board back on May 26, 2016. So the only recommended revision to this charter, to the current time, at this current time, if you don't mind, Jeremy, if you could scroll down to the second page of the charter, I'll just point out where the revision is. So it's right here. I'm sorry, go up one more, go up to number 2. Section 2, yeah, we have to go up the page here. Backwards. There we go, right here, right there. So the revision is within section 2 under purpose, and it's basically in the second paragraph, and it's the very last sentence of the second paragraph. So it's really just adding some clarifying language, some additional clarifying language to specify the inclusion of the IAA's professional code of ethics as required under standard 1010. So it's that very last paragraph where we say including the professional code of ethics. We've always obviously followed the code of ethics, but the reason for this change is that code of ethics is one of 3 mandatory elements within the International Professional Practices Framework. The other 2 are the standards themselves and the definition of internal auditing, both of which are already recognized in the charter under section 2. So we just have to add this clarifying. So that's pretty much it. I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have about this. Otherwise, staff requests the Finance Committee to consider Resolution 1 and the recommendation for its approval to the Board of Directors.
Thank you, Kevin. Do any members of the committee have any questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to accept?
So moved by Katie.
Thank you, Katie. I need a second.
And this Holly.
Thank you, Holly. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Fantastic. Okay. Let's see who's next on our agenda. I apologize. I dropped mine from my screen. I believe it's Jim.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, I'd like to extend my condolences on the passing of your mother last week and express my appreciation for you taking the time today to chair our meeting. It's having gone through it just 6 months ago, I know these are trying, emotional times. And I appreciate your commitment to the KHC and the Finance Committee today.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that.
If we can go to the first statement, which is the pro forma statement of net position, I've kept my navigation aids on the right side, so I'll be referring to different lines. And if you compare line A and E, which is program purpose assets financed by revenue bonds primarily, you can see that the bonds dropped more than the assets did, which means we were able to take cash flows that were in the bond indenture and pay off more bonds than we were losing assets. And so that's a good thing. That's the way it's been for several years, and it's a continuation going forward. Looking at line B, you can see a fairly significant drop in cash. In addition to paying off some bonds with that cash, we did make the $60 million initial deposit toward the pension plan cessation, which by reference to updating, I've talked to those folks across the street, and they have said that I will have the final bill by the end of February, and then we can see and work on getting that total thing put behind us. We still have $30 million left on the balance sheet. You can see on line H that we have estimated we still owe on that liability, but hopefully it'll come in a little bit less than that. We can take that difference back to fund balance. If you look at the other liabilities line on line I, you can see that there's a drop there. If you recall, we had to reclass under a new GASB almost all of our escrow funds into a separate statement, which are not included in these anymore. So you might ask, why did it still drop $11 million? Much of that is because of loan payoffs compared at December 31st of 21 were lower than in June. And we do hold those funds on our balance sheet, the principal and interest funds on a lot of the loans that we service. And so there is a reason for it to drop, although it doesn't drop now nearly as precipitously as it has in years past. And going down to line M, which is our net position as presented on the financial statement, you can see there's a 4.7% increase from $404.7 million at the end of June to $423.8 at the end of December. If there are no questions on this, and obviously I welcome questions, I can explain where that difference came from. Oh, no, wait, sorry, there's two more lines on the schedule, and two of the more important lines. As you're aware, we have most of our earning assets off the balance sheet. That's the loan service for others, mostly Ginnie Mae and some in Fannie Mae. And you can see that we had a 0.1% drop in the overall total loan service for others. I have the word boo written next to that on my copy because that's not a good thing to have happen. We don't like to see our portfolio disappear. We like to see it growing, but we did show a small decrease. Payoffs, as you can imagine with the refi market, the way it's been the last 12 to 18 months really, but really the last 9 or 10, we're having more runoff than we are having new loans to replace them. And then similarly, the average yield on those, or the servicing fee we earn, has dropped from 33.1 basis points to 31.6 basis points. That also has a boo next to it on my schedule because we like to see that number go up. That is the earnings yield or the earnings potential of that portfolio. And so as we've had for the last 4 or 5 years, we are executing our secondary marketing trades to generate as much cash today as opposed to plowing it into servicing fee to be earned or yielded over the future. That's primarily to get enough war chest in to pay off the pension plan. And so it's not an accident that it's dropping. It's just irritating that it's dropping for somebody that wants to see it go up and generate, stand for higher revenues going forward. But we're in good shape. Nothing to be concerned with. And once we get the pension behind us and the interest, the bond markets stabilize a little bit, hope to be able to generate secondary gains, acceptable secondary gains, and also increase our overall servicing fee. So again, if there's no questions on that, I explain where our fund balance change and growth came from. On line C, which is our net interest margin coming out of the bond indenture, as it shrinks, the total notional amount of the outstanding bonds and the loans servicing those bonds, the net interest margin will decrease. That's anticipated and not a surprise. The big thing in the 6 months ended December 21 versus the same period of time in December 2020 is the significant decrease in the gains on sale of loans. If you recall last year, and I think I warned the board and the committee that we are having marvelous and unexpected gains, and I couldn't understand why. I'll take it, and I did take it. We took the huge gains, but in my opinion, the market has returned to a little bit more normal situation. And on the same volume of loans that we sent through the secondary market, we realized only 55 to 60% of the same amount of gains. And I have another graphic later on in the meeting to show a little bit of that, but we're still making the desired return on secondary marketing in that program. It's just not nearly the outstanding returns we had for the last 15 to 18 months. I did check back to the 6 months ended December of 19, and we were in the $13 million range. And so clearly clearly the first 6 months of fiscal 21, those 6 months ended December 2020, were just extraordinary in the amount of gains that the market was, that we were able to take out of the market. And so it's decent, but not nearly when you compare it to prior year. The next remarkable line on here is line 8, general administrative. You'll see that there's a nice drop from $12.2 million to $99.6 million. This is where getting out of the pension plan shows up on our income statement. And my estimate of where how much it should show up would be a little bit over 3 million. It's sitting at 2.6. Some of that is over on the governmental side, where that savings is realized on that side of our income statement. For this presentation, it's only the proprietary or business type asset or activities that are showing up. But we are realizing the huge savings on a running basis on our benefits cost, and this is the line that it would show up on. Just going down to the line O, you'll see that for the first 6 months last year, we booked about a $27.5 million gain. It's 19 million for the first 6 months of this year. Still not too shabby, but compared to last year, I would have preferred to have a duplication of last year. But we'll take the 19, and we're growing. We're showing net profit, and where we need to be showing net profit, and so we're in pretty good shape from that standpoint. So the next chart, if there are no questions, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rushing, but that the story goes from one page to the next in my book. And if you look at this schedule here, which kind of combines the budget with actual and brings into the analysis the fee incomes of the governmental side, and with that the overall budgeted expenses, looking again at line A, you can see that the rental assistance variance of actual to budget is favorable, $530,000. We got increased fees from HUD to administer the HCV program, and we got more vouchers. And so both of those translated, and neither of which we anticipated when we set the budget. And so that is additional revenue, unanticipated, and it shows up as a favorable variance. The big variance is sitting at the Department of HUD for homeless. That includes the Department of Treasury rental relief, emergency rental relief program, which is the major program that we're running. It fits on this line, and we're going to try to get that split between the traditional homeless HUD programs and this rental assistance program, which is a Department of Treasury program that we administer via an arrangement with the state, who's actually the ones on the deal with Treasury. But anyway, as you recall, when we put the budget together last year, we put placeholders in the budget for this program, but we didn't really have any good concrete way of knowing how much we were going to actually be realizing on the program, or how much we were going to be spending on it. And so we estimated, because the program was I think it had a 3-year life before it sunsetted, that we would earn and yield a certain amount each year. That's what the percentage was that we put into the budget. And clearly the need of our rental population here in the Commonwealth was such that we are expending significantly more than the chart will show huge expenditures very, very early on in the program, and then it'll be tapering off as the economy recovers, and we don't have the urgent need in the rental side as we did when the program was first launched. Line E is the other significant program, COVID-related program that we're running. This is a Treasury activity also. It's the Homeowner Assistance Funds. That program was just launched this month. And again, it's going to have the same looking chart as we had on rental, a huge influx of folks asking for assistance on their mortgage payments. And then it'll theoretically taper off as their needs are satisfied. The reason we have income on that, and we've just launched it in February, is the ramp up time. We've incurred significant expenses designing and programming to be able to handle this fund. And all of those expenses are recoverable through admin fee from Treasury. And so we have expenses related to it. This line E is the revenue we've recovered from Treasury to defray those expenses. Looking at these are more on the proprietary side. This next group, loan servicing, is $151,000 favorable to budget. That's a really negligible That is a consistent moneymaker, a very consistent revenue stream, and not easy to budget, but maybe easier to budget than some of these emergency type activities that we're doing on the governmental side. Our rental production, that is a timing issue. That number goes up and down based on the number of projects that close and generate fees. And so we still anticipate that for the year, we'll have a $5.3 million budget revenue come in on it. And that positive variance will slip back into norm and about on budget. And the other two relatively small amounts in general and home ownership's behind. I believe that is mainly because of certain fees that we collect when our lenders cannot supply loans to us in the month they promise them. They're just doing a little bit better delivering their loans to us, and so that's a little bit unfavorable to budget. So overall, if you look at line L, $3.7 million ahead of budget for mostly the reasons I just got done explaining. We have drawn from the HRB $5 million, which is the budgeted draw from the HRB for the first 6 months. Recall from the budget that the $10 million budget is $3 million for our normal contribution from the HRB, and $7 million is to help defray the costs on the proprietary side or on the general operating fund side of the cost of ceasing participation in the pension plan. So we're on budget there. There's enough money in the indenture to fund that obligation, and we're taking it ratably over the year. Looking at row O, this is the unfavorable expenditure amount compared to the budgeted total operating expenses. It's on the next page, but overall, we're $2 million ahead of a budgeted surplus of 5.9 million, or just short of $6 million. So we're off to a fairly good start here. This actually reflects reduced budgeted pension and costs, and we're still running $2 million ahead of that figure. On to the next chart, Jeremy, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Here is an explanation of where the unfavorable $1.6 million expenditure budget sits. And you can see on line D, almost all of its, or more than that amount, is sitting in business services. Included in this line is contract help and contractors that we have hired and employed to assist us primarily on the rental, the emergency rental program, HHERF. Again, we had placeholders in the budget for that activity, and clearly the demands for funds and the overall activity exceeded what we had put in the budget. The way these programs work, though, is for every dollar we expend, we get admin fee back. And so net, it should be neutral to the bottom line, budget versus actual. It's just going to have certain areas are going to be grossed up, favorable and unfavorable, but still net to the planned zero going forward. Looking down some of the other expenses, many of the favorable to budget numbers are due to COVID. You'll see that employee development is favorable to budget. That's on line K. Their travel is favorable to budget. That's on line I. And so a lot of the activities that we thought we would be engaging in during fiscal 22, we are not because of COVID remain just persistent in keeping these other activities in abeyance. We're still getting a lot of training. We're just not traveling to the different places that the offsite places that the training is being historically had been offered. If you look at foreclosure costs, again, with the foreclosure moratoriums that were in place, the foreclosure costs are favorable to budget. Those are realized when the foreclosures are completed. And so we're favorable to budget there. One thing I comment on almost all the time is row S, which is liquidation shortfall. We increased the budget on that significantly versus last year, and payoffs are just been persistent, and we're still unfavorable to budget on that. Our payoffs are still far exceeding what we had budgeted. They have just recently started to slow down, but it's been a tremendous. The portfolio has shrunk a little bit. I've got a chart for that, and you can see, and you'll see that we have a huge amount of loans coming in and just an unbelievable amount of loans being paid off. And so, but all in all, when looking at this chart, we are $1.6 million favorable or unfavorable to budget, but with good explanation and good reason. And so we're more than this amount favorable on the income side. And so overall, we're positive to budget the $2 million that was shown on the prior chart. Are there any questions on the numerics, if you will? I've got a couple of charts that might drive the message home just a little bit differently. I've got another chart. Shoot. We'll go to the chart first, and it explains a number of things as well. If you look at the top of the chart, and just by way of reference for our new directors, the February Finance Committee meeting is held for 2 or 3 express purposes. Once is since we've launched the secondary market program, the management is required to report to the Finance Committee periodically on the performance of the secondary market activity. This meeting is also to bring the committee members a little bit more up to speed on where we are from a single family loan servicing standpoint, the main beneficiary of the secondary marketing program, and also to inform the committee and then eventually the board of what the financing plan for the upcoming 6-month period is, and we'll be getting to that. But if you look at the first section on this, and I don't have my navigation aids, but you can see that for the first 6 months of 2020, we originated $256 million of Ginnie Mae securities and made $20.7 million doing it. For the first 6 months of ended December 2021, almost the exact same amount of notional securities created and only $11 million in profit. We saw this on the previous chart, and this is just a different way of presenting it and comparing the Ginnie production and the Fannie production. You can see that the gain prices were 8 percentage points last year, and it's down to 4.32 percentage points this year. 2% is the mandate of the program, and so we're still outperforming the parameters of the program. But clearly, this chart shows that it's just not the way it was 12 months ago, and it couldn't have been. You can't sustain the prices we got 12 months ago. We management and my staff did not make this 8% last year, nor are we the fault of only making 4 this year. I mean, we make the profits based on what the market presents. We take advantage of the market. Don't misunderstand me, but the pricing differentials are a function of the market, not so much activities or decisions that we are internally making. Looking at the servicing portfolio highlights, our portfolio is basically 3 components: the piece that's serviced for others, we touched on that briefly on one of the earlier charts. Then we have bond indenture loans, and then we have warehouse and loans that are held on our balance sheet in the Housing Assistance Fund. As I've already discussed, we not only have a decrease in the overall service for others, and we, believe it or not, since June of 21, we've had a small increase relative to where we were. The previous number we discussed was as of December, and so we had a decent January from a production versus payoff standpoint. But you can see that most of the runoff is sitting in the bond indenture. We're not putting any new loans in that, and the service for others is getting loans and having a bunch paid off. And then the warehouse is pretty much a cyclical, or it runs on a 30-day cycle, and there's always 80 to 85, maybe $90 million of loans between the warehouse and the Housing Assistance Fund. But you can see how since June, overall, the total number of loans serviced has dropped, and the service for others is maintaining pretty much where it was. Again, looking at the weighted average servicing fee, which is the money we earn on those portfolios, as we saw on the first chart, on the service for others, the weighted average servicing fee dropped from 33.1 to 31.5. And my apologies for the difference column in this one piece of the chart. They are wrong. The actual decrease, as you saw in the earlier chart, was 1.6% decrease, not the 0.6 that's reflected here. And I do apologize for that. And the couple of the other figures are also off. You can do your own math, or I just apologize for it being wrong. That the negative 0.6 on the bottom should be a negative 1.4. So I don't know where I was when I did this chart, but obviously I wasn't on top of my game that day. Looking at the delinquency ratio, it's the overall total defaults is virtually unchanged. The total delinquents is virtually unchanged. The portfolio is full of loans that are in forbearance. And you can see that in the 90+ day delinquency ratio. It's 3.86 still, 4.37 at the end of June. Those forbearance loans have begun to resolve. I have another chart to discuss that. But we're also seeing that some of those are resolving, but they're going back into the 30 or 60 day cycle instead of the 360 to 450 day cycle that the 90 pluses are. And the foreclosures, they will start to increase as the foreclosure moratoriums have expired, and loans will be loans that were in process about to be foreclosed prior to COVID. We can now continue with those foreclosures, and then loans coming off of COVID or stuck in COVID, there'll be some foreclosures in there too. So we're going to see an uptick in that. The running rate prior to COVID was instead of 68.68%, it was in the 1.15, 1.2% range. And so there'll be an increase in the foreclosures, but remarkable decreases hopefully in the 90-day delinquency ratio. And we can revert back to where we were prior to COVID. And there's a chart that more dramatically shows that. The financing plan, it's incumbent upon management to advise the board and the committee as to how we're going to fund our loan production, single-family loan production. For years and years and years, it was through the issuance of housing revenue bonds. The financing plan discussed when we were going to issue bonds, when we were going to refund or refinance bonds. We have no bonds that are subject to and available for refinancing over the next 6 months. And in our opinion, based on calculations we do, the secondary market mortgage purchase program remains the best execution for new originations. And so we have no plan to issue any new money bonds in the next 6 months. This next chart is my U of L red and black chart. And you can see that, and this chart covers 12 to 13 years. And you can see that the red line, which is the service for others, or total servicing portfolio, has peaked about 2 years ago and is decreasing. We've seen that numerically on the charts that we've already presented and do present to the board on a recurring basis. And you can see that the amount of the portfolio that is financed by bonds has been steadily decreasing. And that coincides with the launch of the secondary market mortgage purchase program and the elimination of using revenue bonds to fund single family production. So that most of our portfolio now is off balance sheet, but it's still a significant earning asset. And this chart more graphically shows that it's up there. The higher it gets and the higher it got, the harder it was to maintain up there, because the bigger you are, the more you have to produce to offset the runoff. And it's just very difficult to continue to grow at the rate we had. And it's to some difficulty in maintaining the height of the portfolio where it was. And we've slipped a little bit. We're working on finding other ways to produce loans that will maybe tip that red line back concave and go on back, start going back up again. On the next chart, okay, this is where we are from a COVID standpoint at January 31st of 2022. Tick it up just a little bit more, Jeremy, to the bottom of the schedule, one more. There you go, 878 loans. We have 878 loans still protected under the COVID forbearance programs that all the major federally associated organizations have had out there. That 878 at its peak was 1,639 loans at the end of August of 2020. And so these loans are not rapidly coming off, but they are coming off to the tune of 75 to 100 loans a month. They are going through primarily the HUD forbearance endgame calculation, where HUD is making 15 to 20 months worth of payments on these loans, and the borrower is either getting a modification or has demonstrated an ability to resume paying on the old contract. This is money that we get. It brings the loan current and it gets them off this chart. But there's still a significant number of loans that are in forbearance, and they've been in forbearance for a long time, which is why the 90+ delinquency ratio is still as high as it is. I think we got one chart here that is one that's we have watched this since I've been here, the 10 or 11 years. You can see the impact of COVID. When this blue line started to tick back up, that is the start of COVID. And what this chart shows is the red line is our overall loan delinquency ratio. So what percentage of loans are delinquent relative to the total number of loans we have. The blue line is how many delinquent payments are in those delinquent loans. And as each month marched on during COVID, these 1,000 loans or 1,500 loans got another payment down, and this chart ticked up 1,500 loans worth of portfolio. And so you can see that for 18 to 24 months, with that many loans not making a payment and getting that further down and that many payments short of what we were able to receive, you can see that the delinquent payments ratio steadily grew until the last quarter or so. And as these loans are getting resolved and all those payments are being made, not only do we see a small downtick in the number of loans that are delinquent, that's the red line, but we're seeing an even steeper drop in the number of payments that we're missing because those loans are getting resolved. And remember, in those payments is a servicing fee revenue strip that we've earned. So we're getting 15 to 20 separate servicing strips per loan that are being resolved. And so all that hits the bottom line. We don't accrue service fees. We don't accrue service fees. And so those are hitting the bottom line. And so as this number, as the blue line now starts to revert back to where it was underneath the 20%, all that represents earned and unpaid, unreceived revenue. And for those members of the board that were here in March of 2020, when everything hit the fan, I think it was the executive committee gave management the authority to increase a line of credit. And we still have to pay these payments out to our investment security holders and our bond holders. And so to the extent we don't get the payments, we have to find money to make those payments. And so we knew that with the moratorium and the forbearance that was being initiated even back in March of 2020, that this was going to be a lot of cash that was going to be not headed our way, but we were going to still have to pay it out. And so we did have the foresight to get those lines of credit increased and have them in place just for the purpose of advancing the principal and interest to our security holders if we need to. So anyway, the story is consistent. It is getting more favorable as the COVID forbearance loans resolve themselves and revenue that's embedded in all those delinquent payments is coming through. We are running 2 big COVID programs, HHERF, generating a lot of expense, incurring a lot of expense, generating a lot of admin fees, and helping an awful lot of Kentuckians stay in their homes and in their rental units and make their rent and utility payments. And with the Homeowners Assistance Fund that we just launched, it's going to be the same. We'll be expending, I think the total program is $85 million, helping homeowners keep their homes and not be put out on the street by the unfavorable parts of the economic unfavorable parts and the residential unfavorable parts of COVID. It's just a terrible, insidious disease, and we're doing everything we can with help of state and federal government to not make it worse than for a lot of Kentuckians than it otherwise could be. I think that's all I've got on this, Mr. Chairman. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jim. Does anyone on the committee have any questions regarding Jim's presentation? Once again, Jim, you do such a good job with your presentation that you leave no questions to ask. I believe you are also next on the agenda.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And hopefully this will be brief, but every year we have to renew our contract with our auditors. The first thing we have to do is we ask the state auditor of public accounts, whether he or she wants to do our audit. And we've received letter back from the state auditor that they will not be able to perform our financial audit at June 30th. Therefore, we are interested in renewing our contract with Crow LLP. They've been our auditors for 7 years, I believe. We're in the third triennial contracts sequence with those folks. And in 2021, we issued a request for proposals for audit services. Staff evaluated the responses and made a recommendation to the board of directors at that time. The board of directors voted to renew They reviewed the recommendation and approved a contract for fiscal 22 and providing for 2 additional consecutive years after that. The contract renewal this year will be the first renewal of the 2 additional consecutive renewals that were envisioned with that approval last year. You are listening and maybe seeing a proud father. My son has been invited to join the partnership at Crow. And with that partnership come additional independence considerations that have to be considered. And for, again, those of you who have been on the board for several years, you are aware that, or we've made the board aware and the committee aware that he worked for Crow. He has risen through the ranks of Crow, and that I do not participate in the evaluation of the proposals that are submitted with respect to the RFPs that go out, just to maintain as much distance as we can on that particular activity. Making partner invokes additional considerations that we need to make sure that everybody's comfortable with respect to having Crow perform our audit again for fiscal 20. The contract is for fiscal 23, but it's to do the audit for the fiscal 22, our fiscal 22 audit. And the key provisions and items that have to be considered when there's a particular relativity between a partner of Crow and or any other organization. I mean, this is professional guidelines from the Financial Accounting Standards Board and the CPA societies, is that the engagement partner, the related party or the partner that's related to somebody such as myself cannot be considered a covered member. And a covered member is a partner in the office, physically in the office of the office performing the audit. And we are audited out of the Louisville, Kentucky office, and my son works out of the New York City office. He is engaged in broker-dealer audits, not HFA audits. That individual can also not be a member of the engagement team, regardless of where he is based, and my son is not part of and never has been, and I can assure you never will be part of our engagement team. And he cannot be in a position to influence anybody that is working on the attest engagement. And having talked to the folks at Crow, our audit partner who's been our audit partner for 4 years, and her predecessor on our audit, the audit partner, Scott Nickerson, the fact is that he will not be in a position to influence anybody working on the engagement. And so having met those 3 restrictions or requirements, he's not considered a covered member, and therefore the independence issue is not an issue from a Crow professional standpoint. I've reviewed what they reviewed and the conversations they've had with some of their ethics and independence group and their folks in their group, and I agree with their assessment. I had this looked at several years ago when it was apparent my son was serious about maybe becoming a partner, and the prior partner, Scott Nickerson, came to the same conclusion that it would not be an independence issue. And I believe Winston, I don't want to speak for Winston and Jeremy, but I've run this by them here so that, and they do not consider it to be an issue such that we can't go ahead and renew the contract with Crow. This is a full disclosure on my part and the management's part so that the committee's in the know. I'm happy to share this with the full board next week. But what we're asking for today is authorization and approval to take this proposal to the board next week with the recommendation of the Finance Committee that we do renew the contract with Crow for contract year fiscal 23, but audit year fiscal 22.
And for the record, I just want to state I concur with Jim, and I don't see this as a problem at all. And I'd recommend that we take the action as set forth here.
Thank you, Winston. And I'd like to ask the members of the committee if there are any questions before we take up a vote. Okay, hearing none. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, no questions.
Okay. Hearing none, ask for a motion.
So moved by Katie.
Thanks, Katie. Second, please.
Second, Isaac.
Thank you, Isaac. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
And congratulations, Jim, to your son and yourself. For that's a big step up.
Yeah, it's we were thrilled. We've known about it. We knew we was up for it back in August or July or August, and then the final word came through in October. But yeah, it's a big deal, and we're real proud of him. And I think he can still get his head through a doorway, but I think it's becoming increasingly difficult.
You guys might have to get a second home in the New York area so you can visit more often. Okay, Jeremy, I think we're just down to general notes and things, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. I do not have any informational items. Does anybody on the committee have any informational items they'd like to bring forward? Okay, all right. And my apologies, Isaac, if this is your first committee meeting, I should have pointed that out and made sure I introduced you. So I apologize for that.
Problem.
Thank you, sir. Okay, any items from the staff or the board in general?
I'm good.
Not from me, just a reminder that we do have a board meeting next week, and appreciate everybody's attendance.
Thursday at 2?
That's it.
All right, Thursday at 2. Sounds great. All right, well, hearing none, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved by Katie.
And a second?
I'll second, Holly.
Thank you, Holly. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Anybody that wants to stay, say no. All right, everybody have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.